Hey guys, so we are doing this last bit on social media content. So this is kind of a recap, like the previous lecture, just to go through the key points and understand where this will now fall into kind of your larger strategy. Now that you understand some of these tactical elements and best practices. And this is a little bit more tactical. Like this is essentially a component of social media strategy as it is. But as we've discussed, social media is really going to be worthwhile if you're getting engagement, if you have some value for these users who are following you, who have given you the privilege of being in their feed. So for that to have continuity, you need to have quality content. And so content creation itself is really a big part of this. I would look at this more so as content creation, even as content marketing, rather than a part of this social media formula. Content creation exists for a lot of reasons. Anybody who wants to put out anything is able to do that. And the amount of distribution you get, who grants you the privilege of you being that publication on that feed on that website. That really depends on the quality and value of that content. And so what is going to be important is for you to have that self-awareness, or collective awareness on the team on what is the level of quality that you are creating, and what is the path forward for you and your team's contribution on making that happen. We've looked at photos, we've looked at a lot of different things where there are varying degrees of effort, of quality, of things you can do to have an impact. And for social media content, it is the same on a number of different levels, on what is going to be compelling, on how much effort you put into varying the text, how much effort you put into experimenting with different formats. There are a lot of best practices, and there's a lot you can glean from your audience. But what all of this needs to be benchmarked against is engagement, and of how responsive your audience, the people you're interacting with, are to this content. So the different content types, images and photos, we've looked at this and we can see that this is the most engaging individual format. So this typically the best performing content when you look at the scale of top individual posts outside of platforms that are specific to video. It's going to be images. It's going to be funny bits of text, things that can be processed quickly, things that someone can hit the like button on and move on. Quality, the visual appeal, the aesthetic value, the ability for that content to engage emotions, that all can add into that value that any individual content piece has. And there's a lot of different strategies on how you can achieve that, and that is going to depend on your handle, on what makes sense. Video content, of course, we know is super popular. Short form video, Instagram Reels and TikTok are very, very popular. It's kind of sunk into part of our societal demographics as just something that a consumer is spending a lot more time on compared to previous generations. We see just a lot more watch time. We see a lot more of a willingness to watch video more so than before. And part of that can be technology. Part of that is kind of the ability for good content to be produced, and how that has kind of evolved. Use another way to look at it is that individual video content has more value now than before, and so that can also have a downside to quality. We know that that selfie format has some disadvantages, but there is a widespread acceptance of kind of these lo-fi, quick phone operated videos that are super popular on TikTok, and that's totally acceptable. It's just how successful that is for you when you repeat that. That's going to be for you to determine. Everything evolves quickly. What is working on TikTok now may not necessarily be the same in a year or two. Again, everything is kind of a battle of quality and value. What is going to be appealing and interesting? What are you putting in production value? So short form video, I think, is kind of a fast moving target. Longer formats, so YouTube, this is all displacing streaming video at this point. Like, we know traditional TV and cable has been hurting, and the quality on that is going up, and we'll just touch on that in a bit. And what makes sense for you on the video format is going to be your own resources to determine. Text-based posts, so this is general text content, anything you can put in a sentence and stick on a post. Everything has text on it, obviously, but what you put, what sort of sizzle and magic and value that sentence you're going to throw on social media has, that's for you to determine and use your insights and creativity on. There's obviously a lot that can be done, but sometimes the simple stuff works really well, and kind of mixing things up with a text post that fits into the narrative you're building for your followers. There's a lot you can do. And then infographics. So when you look at some of the image and text content, that can be supplemented very easily with what is essentially an infographic. Now, infographic, when you look at how that term is used in industry, like that's charts and data. But when you separate out all the content, there's a lot of these image posts that have supplementary information to kind of support something that that post itself is saying. And so infographics, it's just an interesting way of communicating data, information. They always do well. I wouldn't necessarily put it in this kind of main silo of content, but it's effective enough that I would just put this up on the menu for most brands to consider and look at, and just how that's visualized is really the trick. And it doesn't necessarily have to be data and information on a chart. There's a lot of ways to visualize information. It can just be an image of some sort, something more abstract, and it's your own determination. So there's a lot of ways to separate out content. And so one way to put this into three distinct categories is rational, emotional, and transactional. And that can kind of mirror kind of a state of mind and how people think. When we look at content, this may be a useful way for you to separate out kind of what you're creating, how you're creating. I wouldn't necessarily build your home plan around this, but for you to understand kind of how this is performing, how something can work for you, this should be pretty useful. So emotional content specifically. So storytelling, relatable narratives, kind of writing something out or creating a clip of something that kind of shares a story that specifically triggers emotions. This does very well on Instagram. This can also work really well on short form video content, can work well on short form video content. If this is something you were able to create, absolutely. High engagement, emotions. People are very frequently more emotional than they are rational. But when you consider what you're creating, you're not going to hit a home run or be likely to be very successful and just always on just emotional, playing, just playing on this like single category. These are all things that you include to kind of mix into your feed, and there's also a gradient to each of these. What will qualify as emotional content, what will qualify as rational content, isn't always straightforward. There is a place for rational content, especially for some types of accounts. So sharing information, how-to guides, educational post analysis. So that would work well for B2B, for example. A lot of that content for like a service business that has like a professional audience, like that's going to be just straightforward rational content. And then you can throw in a mix of emotional content. When you look at kind of the nitty gritty of this study, there is a lot of kind of contextual information that is going to determine all the performance. But what this really is just outlining is how different types of content, thematically or however you categorize it, is going to perform different for users, and that's kind of something we already knew. And this is just a more scientific way of categorizing that. Transactional content, so and this highly context dependent. Where you see that transactional content is it's a make it or break it on how much someone is willing to engage with that. And part of that we'd speculate is just from just this huge influx of advertising, the tendency for brands to just try to stick in a click here, buy me now thing everywhere. Where and how that's successful will depend on how interesting you make that, where you're placing this kind of call to action to kind of get someone to buy something. Um, Specific tactics work well. This sense of urgency, these kind of traditional like sales tactics, but and the onus is on you as the arbiter of social media to find a creative way to do that. The transactional stuff, yeah, that will perform well, but what that means for you. Yes, someone bought your stuff, but how much time and money are you spending on that? Do you really want to spend 1-to-1 for every $1 you spend on Facebook ads, get that back, when a little bit more creativity and effort in making this transactional content better can give you a 2-to-1 ratio? Like, that's a very real difference that you can see on performance. And when you look at the marketplace of social media advertising and social media content, it's a lot of garbage. And it is sometimes remarkable to look at like how willing people are to just continue with that. And again, like all of this is just looking at ways to narrow down what you're doing, to understand it better, and to kind of provide some rationale on, well, here's why this is happening. We see that transactional ads are really dependent on the context. So that means the image you're using, that means what kind of post you're putting in. Why don't we try to push harder on that instead of just trying to like sell the thing. So and we're going back to this concept of individual users. As social media becomes more difficult, as it becomes uh, more expensive to buy ads, you have to just pay more attention to that value you are providing users, to the story and the conversation you're having with this person over an extended period of time. Um, with content and what you're creating, like with everything else, you start with your audience. You understand what this person wants to see. What do they look at? What is their, what interests they have? What type of content would they be willing to browse based on what they currently browse and what handles they follow? There's a lot of insights you can pull out, and if it's not there necessarily for you in your analytics, well, it is there. It's just a matter of looking and finding the right tools. Just make a post. There's it's a very easy way of engaging one-on-one with people and of using that qualitative data to inform your strategy. And as unscientific as that may sound for some people, just asking a bunch of random followers and getting their input, the outcome can be a lot better than just relying on kind of your vanilla cardboard social analytics that isn't telling you much information. Getting feedback is better than getting no feedback. And having some insights is better than no insights, unless there's a good chance that it's going to steer you into a place where you're going to do some damage. But with social media content, that's it's not likely. What you're the choice that you're making is often screaming into the void and just posting stuff that no one sees, or just having a few more eyeballs look at what you're posting. Your insights and your audience are going to just really help you understand what to create and just how to communicate with them. Long form video. So we're going to look at these different types of content. So this is any piece of content that's more than 10 minutes. There's a lot. There's a lot that can make sense for this, depending on the type of handle. If you're a fast fashion brand, this is probably going to make a lot less sense than like a service-based business, like an accounting company. Like doing a video about taxes or something like that, that makes sense to create into a longer piece of content that they can push out as educational material. Like that's something that is worthwhile. But I don't want to discount that. Like for a fast fashion brand, behind the scenes video, having a longer conversation with an influencer, it'll come down to kind of resources and production and what makes sense. But if you're doing long form video, it shouldn't be, hey, we can make a 10-minute video, let's throw it on. If there's a meaningful reason for you to have that 10-minute video, if you can spend time getting that quality to a point in long form video where you're confident that like this is a meaningful part of your social strategy, then you should do it. If you're just throwing stuff on just because you have some B-roll and you can have a producer stitch something together, like that probably doesn't make as much sense. Short form video. So again, this is the now. This is where you should be looking at. This is where you should be spending your time on. So this is this is impactful for a number of reasons. Number one, on Instagram, this has some preference by the feed. They are giving view time to short form videos. So if you post on Instagram Reels, you are going to get eyeballs on your content that would not have seen your account otherwise. Similarly, what you're creating for Instagram Reels, either you made it for TikTok or you can put it on TikTok. I mean, there's some interchangeability with some of these accounts where typically you're targeting the same audience. Some brands, they may have a very specific TikTok audience. TikTok is going to be obviously much younger, much more specific. But at this point, it's a large enough platform where brands can jump in. You don't necessarily need to make hard choices between like Instagram and TikTok. Um, Video under a minute is great. Uh, Again, like there's views that this short form video is getting that it has not gotten in previous generations with just regular image content. This is a place where you can just spend time and get benefit out of it. Um, there's a lot of influencers that are very successful on short form video. It's very well received. There's a lot you can do with video under 60 seconds. So again, this is where you should spend your time on. Yes, images and everything else, but if you can create short form video, do it. Live content. So this is a little bit more sophisticated. So again, back to kind of this overarching premise, like, is it worth your time to do? Is it going to be good content? If you make it, should you make it? Like, how expensive is it going to be? How much time does it take for you? And what else could you be doing with that time? For an account that is spending a lot of time promoting themselves, especially with collaborations, you should do live content. Again, this is, when we discussed this thing with individual relationships, and stop looking at your like count and how many likes you have and whatever. It's all individual people. Well, guess what? These individual people, you get to meet them. They're right here. You will see what they say. You will be, you will hear them breathing. And so when you get involved with a social media account, after a certain point, you really start feeling the pulse of your audience. You see what they're posting, you see how they talk, you see the reactions they're getting. And if you're at that level where you're really looking at this, live content probably makes sense for you. I would definitely encourage you guys to look at this as part of a collaboration strategy and just see where else you can tie in this live content, because it's an event. It's like you're having a party. You want everybody to know you're having a big party, and you need to kind of get enough visibility on this single time where people will show up. uh, and again, this is where it gets really important. If you're doing live content, to just do live content, just have social media stuff going on, it's not a good idea. If you hype up a like Twitter Spaces event, and you get everyone there, and it ends up sucking, that is not a good scenario for you. It's not a good scenario for your followers because it creates a lasting impression. It's just you've wasted their time, and it's going to be much more painful for you to disappoint followers on a live event than it is, in crap content. So if you're going to do live content, do it well. I'm saying that for everything. We need to make good content. Yes, that's right. But no, for real, you do not mess up live content, because it will have permanent damage on your followers. They just won't show up again. So GIFs and memes. So if you are a consumer brand, this is probably okay now. It wasn't okay in previous years, and still for a lot of brands, like this sort of category is a no-go zone. But it gets high engagement. This is, when you look at all the content that's shared, you can imagine that memes and GIFs and this funny sort of image stuff is a big chunk of that. And what you need to do is just balance a professional approach and how you communicate on social with your own ability to share this kind of content, and easier for consumer brand if you're an attorney or something like that, and you're thinking about how can I make my stuff better. Don't do this because it's just going to look weird, and it's you're going to get some engagement, but it's probably not worthwhile for you to create this sort of impression of yourself and your social handle that you're just so desperate for likes and whatever that you're going to start posting cat pictures even though you're sharing stuff on like trademark law or like personal injury law or something. Like, you need to make sure it fits. If you're a funny brand that's selling goofy stuff, absolutely. Like, this is a core part of your strategy. If you're somewhere in between, if you're like Target or like, some big retailer, like here and there, you can throw it in. But how you manage that with the brand voice and everything, that's for you to show judgment on. Just because it performs really well, and there's a lot of research here on gifs and memes, they get good engagement. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you necessarily should. Yes, it's all about engagement, but at what cost? And sharing like the low quality memes is not a good part of your social strategy. Balance with everything else and find a way to create this sort of content where it fits and your audience isn't going to be like, what the heck is this thing that they just posted? Social audio content. So, again, very popular. Podcasts have exploded in popularity where there was a big growth spurt where like at or past the tail end of that. Excuse me, when you look at this as a format, a lot of places are starting to create podcast content with varying degrees of quality. This is more of an individual creator tactic, less so for brands, for professional and a B2B stuff. Excuse me, it may make sense. Again, consider the content that you're putting in there. Does this really have value? And what's important here is to make sure that your evaluation of, hey, is my podcast good? You really need to make sure you're getting feedback here. You need to make sure the people making the decisions have good peripheral vision on podcasts. Again, not everybody is familiar with kind of the range of podcast topics, what's good. If you decide to do like a plumbing podcast, you need to research plumbing podcasts. You need to understand like what's out there. You also need to understand what's good for a podcast. And so, really the point here is that this is getting into, the reasons that talk radio is popular. Part of that is also boosting the popularity of podcasts. And so now that we are kind of getting out of this homegrown, anybody can make a podcast sort of deal. I mean, it still is like that, but now that it's evolving, now that you can tell production value is going up, people are putting in like high-end audio bits and just really making this more like radio shows. You need to make sure that you're competing at that level. And it doesn't mean that you need to get a professional audio producer. There's just more emphasis. There's a higher barrier to entry now than there was before. And for your business to create that content, it needs to be a hard decision. And part of the reason I'm saying this is because podcasts have seen explosive growth, and it's just the barrier to entry has been low, but now people are making good podcasts. So the point is, you really need to spend time making sure that you are making the right decision on whether or not you should get into podcasting. And if you do spend the time to, 1 second. I'll restart this in just a minute. Hey guys, just having some technical difficulties here, so just finishing this lecture up. All right, so last few bits here. So links and articles. This is a lot of content, especially for editorial destinations. So um, anything that's an article, anything that links to a website. Um, obviously there's news websites, there's blogs. This is their bread and butter. They use these types of links to drive content to their websites, drive readership. If you have a purpose for your website where you can push traffic through content like this, by all means share it. There's options for you to enhance that with images. There's also if you look at how a web page is configured, you can kind of set the graphic on there on how it appears on social. Um, it's not the best strategy if this is all your content. Again, if you don't if you don't have a meaningful purpose for social media, if you're just posting the post, by all means, I mean, you can do this, but you're not really going to kind of drive a lot of engagement. All you're really doing with this is just showing people that you can post content. And that's just, unfortunately, like that's something that I do with my agency. And, it's just not like social media for us is a place that, we post some content. We don't spend a lot of time on there because there really isn't it's not a place where we drive business, and it's not ideal. It's not kind of the strategy that we would like to use, and it's just I just throw some articles up on there, but on LinkedIn it gets a little bit of engagement, and it's just something that fits into the workflow right now. Is that your strategy for a social page? Absolutely not. You don't want to just throw out content just to throw out content. But there are some handles that are very successful in this. Curated content. If you're focused on a specific niche and you share out links to articles, links to content, then where it's relevant, then it can make. Uh, with stuff like an e-commerce campaign on like Facebook ads, as an example, definitely like this is, yeah, I mean, you need to, unless the transaction is happening on that platform, you need to drive back to the website. And so, there's a lot of tracking that is available, but as soon as you get somebody out of the platform, you're going to like lose a lot of people in the ability to track that. But like Facebook Business Manager, TikTok ads, like there's definitely ways that you can see who's buying stuff. You can see what that connection is between everybody who you send to e-commerce from your social page. There's also just general landing pages, blog posts that have a lot of meaningful effort. That's a good place to focus on. Like for example, if you overinvest your time in a blog post and then you pitch it to other blogs, and you're trying to kind of get placement with other destinations for a specific article, you're going to see a lot of social sharing for that piece of content that's outside of you just posting stuff. So there's definitely a role for kind of link and article content. Just don't do like the cheap and easy strategy that's next to worthless, unless you're just doing it to show like, hey, you can post on social, which in many cases like some people do, including myself. But use it wisely. You're trying to drive followers, if you're trying to make social media, a part of like a central part of your marketing strategy, this probably isn't going to be a central part of the content that you're posting. So let's just look at the factors of what is good content. Social media, like where we really want to evaluate that. So quality visuals, we know from what we've reviewed, we are, uh, we tend to place a lot of value in aesthetics. Doesn't necessarily mean everything needs to be super professionally designed. It's definitely not the case. You can look at TikTok as an example. Like that is a lot of that content is just homegrown, on your phone, record you doing whatever. But if you're creating content and you have the ability to enhance the visuals, to make this, part of the value in that content, part of why somebody's going to like it, definitely invest that time. It doesn't need to be everything. It doesn't need to be your core strategy, but it should always be a consideration. Visual content, especially content that has some time invested in the visual aspect, gets more engagement. Um, the actual post itself is always going to have a caption. Unless you're sharing like a reel or something, and even that has captions and text you throw in there. Uh, the very simple way to explain what is best in this lecture: concise and clear content, brevity. Look up what brevity means. Keep your post clear. Keep your message clear. Don't overcomplicate what you're posting. Longer posts, longer the text, less likely it is someone's going to engage with it, read it, etc. And there's some exceptions to that, like longer Twitter posts in some cases. But social media users favor quick, digestible content. We're all chimps. We're all just pressing buttons, scrolling through stuff. Uh, Short content that you can process very quickly is going to work the best for you, almost always. Um, Storytelling. So, storytelling as a word gets overused. It is um, conceptually, you can take storytelling and kind of what that means. You are painting a picture for someone. That's just another way to describe the same thing. It's just a bunch of concepts and information that a person is stringing together in a story, call it a narrative. You're communicating information that a person is able to connect in kind of one big glob of information. Whether it's an actual story will depend on what that is. Relatable content, engaging content that is going to really like come out of someone being able to process more information. Well, again, how you connect that, it could be a personal story, it could be something emotional that's just a few blips of content, it could be just one post. It's a different way of getting someone in and reading what you're saying. Informative content. So, and this is the bread and butter of a lot of different social media accounts. We have a lot of reasons for content, for sharing it, for liking a post, but above everything else, every piece of information we take in, it adds to our collective experience, to the things the total sum of all the stuff we know in the world, and a lot of that is even the entertainment stuff that is doesn't really add much value, just a stupid picture of a cat. uh, we learn from it, we gain information from it, and there's this really intrinsic component of learning, and that puts a lot of value in informative content. So tips, insights, um, even just a short story about somebody else, from like a influencer, he said this, then they broke up. You're learning from that. So when you make that a core strategy, it works well. And when you're intentionally creating content to educate people, it works well. There's always going to be value for that in people, and how relevant it is to them. That's what kind of determines how well that's going to perform. In some cases, it's not relevant at all. There's people that don't want to learn about physics, as an example. Like that's just not, this small segment of people get excited about physics content. But again, where that fits in with your audience is for you to determine. So content ideation is where you're going to spend your time, in addition to the content production. Um, so first thing, out the gate, social listening, you should be looking at what people are posting. You should be looking at your analytics tools. You should be creeping on people's profiles. That's a big kind of unsaid component of social media research is the qualitative research, looking at what people are doing, not on the tool. You're not using Sprout or Hootsuite. You're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you're just looking at the publicly available information and making a qualitative assessment on the kind of stuff people are sharing, the kind of stuff that people are engaging with. Um, but you can do that to a certain degree. It's not scientific. Use the social tools. Use what is available in each of these platforms to just pull information and just build an idea of what is interesting, what is, excuse me, what is on the table for me to create. And so you can make bookmarks, you can make lists. In some of the tools, there's ways that you can kind of store some of this. But ultimately, you are going to be using your head unless you're very organized and can like write very detailed notes. Probably a good idea. Um, your own understanding is going to help you, not only pull out ideas, but just shape, other ideas into, some of these successful concepts. So if you're in the place where, you're contributing or doing the ideation yourself, do your research, understand what people are sharing, understand the audience, pull in as much information as you can. Competitors. So this is a shortcut. You can just look at the other social handles and see what they're posting. Similar to the social listening, this is very specific to competitors. So look at what the other handles are posting. But here's the catch. Not a lot of people do such a great job. In fact, a lot, especially if you are doing this for a brand or a company and you're looking at your direct competitors, it's probably going to be like the as far as benchmarking yourself and setting the standard of excellence, that's probably going to be the minimum. Look outside of your industry, look at content creators, see how you can adapt that. In brands and businesses, especially businesses that are not consumer brands, they are the worst on social. It moves very slow. Uh, and so balance that with out of your own information. Get a list of ideas together. You don't want to get too ambitious. Obviously, like if you're doing social for a restaurant, like you're not Nike, you're not going to put that stuff out, but you can use that as a reference. Pull out some ideas, pull out some, core conceptual idea from like one of their videos that you could incorporate into, your restaurant social. I mean, it's going to be a stretch, but you're going to take something that works well and adapt it to your situation, to your resources, and how that fits in for your social handle. And that leads us to experimentation. Unless you've been doing social for a specific handle for a while, uh, and you have a very clear idea of what's working and what's not, and you've done a lot of experimentation, you should be day to day planning to try different formats, different types of content, seeing what works. Uh, balance that with the needs of the feed. You don't want to, put out like crazy art house stuff and like, oh man, nobody likes my, concept music video. I mean, you're not going wild. This isn't a research project, but leave a part of your strategy, what you're doing, open so that you have the room to try something and see what works. And be intentional. Understand what you're doing. Don't throw just anything that's not normal into this experiment category. I mean, there's smart experimentation and just putting stuff out and saying it's an experiment. So I mean that's your own kind of balance to find. Content themes. So and referencing back to these individual relationships, you're having conversations with individual people that see your content. You get the same few people that are commenting on your posts. Create some sort of thematic content, something that like every Tuesday you put out like the Tuesday pasta report. If you're like Italian restaurant, that's kind of a dumb idea, but it's an example of something that you can repeat. There is a lot of this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Take a good concept, a strong social media concept that performs, and adapt it into a theme. Don't kill it with the theme, or just totally like relabel it as something else, but use this continuity to up level what you're doing. And so what that means is that you're taking a good piece of content, something that is successful, and you're attaching words to it so that people know that it's they're going to keep getting that. They're going to keep getting the Tuesday pasta report. Oh man, I can't wait for that pasta report. That's a bad example, but you'll find a lot of similar examples in some of the larger handles, not that frequently, but and it's creating this continuity, anticipation, and something that people can come back to. Content trends, very, very popular. Don't overdo it. Not everybody wants to hear about Taylor Swift stuff, but you'll have varying degrees of like how appropriate this is. You may want to focus on kind of what's relevant to your brand. Pop culture and kind of the zeitgeist, is much more relevant for consumer brands, or at least historically it's been that way. But in the state of social where everything's hyper competitive, now may be a good time to really try some new content themes, and some of these uh, trending topics that might feel strange for your handle or business or whatever to talk about, but it's something people recognize. It's Taylor Swift is relevant. Taylor Swift is something that oh, I've heard of that. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more engagement, but experimentation, see what works, doesn't. Keyword research. So this is just something bit separate and later in the course, but a keyword is just something people type in anywhere, and it's underused on social. So research what research these different uh, excuse me hashtags, topics, things you're covering with your social handle, and see what comes up, and look at the content that is coming up. Look at what's been successful. Use this as a point of reference. External references. So this is really important. Uh, Most people look within. They look in their industry. They look on social. They do not pull out a lot of ideas from other places, from books, from like TV shows or something like that. You look at what you can pull in from places where you're not typically going to see a social media handle like reference. So anything podcasts, movies, books, it's an interesting opportunity right now just to pull in a lot of different content and information with chat GPT and AI, like summarizing content is pretty interesting right now. It's a lot of spam that's being pulled or created from that, but and there's different opportunities to use that as a foundation for something better than spam. Obviously, social analytics we talked about. Trends just in general. So like TikTok is a platform where those TikTok trends, it's critical. I mean, that's how you are going to get outside of your followers, show up organically for new users. Participation posts. So this is just the term that I use, and whether or not you adapt that and reuse that is up to you. I hate to be a source of another buzzword, but it's an accurate name for a large category of content posts that invite the user to participate in whatever that is, and that could be questions. It could be just looking for a response. It's a very strong and effective strategy. It builds engagement. It creates this singular audience for you to have a conversation with. There's places where this is really this works really well. There's places that this doesn't work well. Um, this tends to happen anyway on certain platforms, like YouTube, for example. I wouldn't call a piece of content on YouTube a participation post where you're like, tell me your favorite color, but you're going to get that participation anyway. And depending on what is in your 30 minute segment of video, people may feel that it is this sort of participation content anyway. Um, Anything you do that is creating some sort of trigger to people interact with you is going to help you. So whatever this is, if it's questions, some sort of audience challenge, it'll work well. Like this is like social media gold. You want engagement, you want interaction. Humor works really well. It's one of the most effective things you can put in any piece of social content, and it depends on your perception of humor. Obviously, it's there's comedians and then there's normal people, but if you have that talent, uh, I actually wonder why there are you know I've lived in LA for a long time, and obviously I met a ton of comedians are trying to kind of get started, and inevitably, the vast majority of them, in fact, did not end up being comedians. They're very funny people. This is a great job. Social media would be a great job for those kind of people. If you have the ability to make jokes, crack jokes, you should be working on social media. Um, how that fits in with your brand, how that fits in with your content, obviously will depend a lot on the handle and the industry, but uh, do it. Don't make bad jokes. If you have to try too hard, if you have to like look up puns and really like string it together, maybe don't invest a ton of time in that, and don't make that this an overarching theme of and of what you're doing. You should try to, even if you're not funny at all, you should try to find and use humor. But if it's not, it's something that you or your colleagues can just immediately do well in. Don't make it a focus. And part of just marketing in general is finding your strengths and matching that up to your responsibilities. And for a brand, that may be finding the strengths in the team and the resources and matching that up to their stream of content. Um, so that is yeah, that is it for this last piece of uh, social media content review. There is a post with a lot of uh, excuse me, there's an article that our module I put in with a lot of post ideas. It's hard to categorize everything in social media into specific, silos. Like, um, there's a lot of overlap, but you should, for your own brand, just get a list, get a very clear idea of what kind of content people are creating. Again, reference, learn, create a new list, create a new uh, a set of ideas that you can build from. You should be spending a lot of your time on social media content, if not the vast majority, for whatever you're doing on social media. Uh, so that's it. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.